Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, hello everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Experts. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have over 35 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, an intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant mentor. I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you're attending live, just a reminder that you're in listen only mode. You can start to type questions into the Q&A box, and I see that we already have one question. If you are watching this as a recording, and more people are doing that, just a disclaimer that things change very quickly at NIH. It's August 7th, 2024. So everything that we talk about today is true to the best of my knowledge, but you should always check to see if there's been any kind of a policy change at NIH since then. And of course, none of this is meant to replace a conversation with your program officer and the work of your pre-award support office. This is meant to supplement those things. So what you should be viewing in the library right now, well, given that it's August 7th, I would hope that if you are targeting a deadline in October, that you have finished up with your prep work. So if you're working, for example, out of Master the R series, hopefully you have completed the checklist for preparation and specific aims and are working toward finalizing all your decisions. I'm a big believer that people should not write any substantive portions of the research strategy until after they know for sure, have had a conversation with their mentors and their program officer, and are certain about their deadline, institute, NOFO, study section. You understand whether it's an ESI application or not, etc. You really need to know the exact circumstances to which you're writing. And if you begin writing before you know those things, you're setting yourself up for a lot of rewriting. So hopefully you're kind of putting the finishing touches on that and then beginning to write the research strategy and moving into watching chapters 3 and 4 of Master the R series. So in terms of any NIH updates, the one thing that I really wanted to show you, and let me drop I'm going to screen share, but I'm also going to drop a URL into the chat. So hang on one sec. Okay, so one of my team members brought this to my attention, and I'm going to just do a quick screen share. NIH Office of Science Policy has put out a statement about artificial intelligence. So, as you know, this is kind of an ongoing area of interest for me. And in fact, I was just before this call speaking with somebody who's going to be coming on as a guest and potentially developing a short course for our library about the application of artificial intelligence to grant writing, and specifically to biomedical grant writing. But many of us have been waiting for NIH to come out with some sort of a policy and concerning the use of artificial intelligence in this is in research, but also in NIH grant writing. And they link to other policies. Some of them are policies that existed before, and they just kind of explain the application of those to AI. Some of them are related to AI specifically, like this one has to do with their policy concerning the fact that reviewers are not allowed to use AI tools in peer review. So this is specific to AI. Other things are just kind of reminding you, like, this is a policy we had that predated AI, and it has an AI application or it's relevant to AI. So anyway, I would encourage you to spend some time on this website. I know I will. I literally just got this link a couple of hours ago, so I haven't spent any time on it at all yet. It's really just kind of like, new to my attention. Maybe some of you were aware of it. I was not. But I plan on digging deeper into that this weekend to get a sense of of what that website says. So, okay, so let's move on to, oh, and I should say, today we were scheduled to have my friend Daniela Itzo was supposed to come today, and her topic was going to be how to respond to reviewers and revise manuscripts versus grant applications. And Daniela had a family emergency, and so we're going to reschedule with her that topic. So you're stuck with me today. So this is a great time to ask your questions. So I'm going to begin with a question that is in, and actually there are two questions now in the chat, and I did get two others emailed to me. So let's start there, but feel free to load up the Q&A box with questions. Okay, so the first question is, hello, thank you for these helpful sessions. I'm planning to apply for an NCI R01, proposing a clinical trial that will accrue in about 3 years, and R01s are typically 4 to 5 years, but will then be in follow-up for several years past the 5-year R01 limit. Is there a standard way to finesse such an application, and note that I would plan to apply for additional funding at year 5 to support longer term follow-up, or is this a non-starter because the trial will last longer than 5 years? Um, so there are several ways to handle this, and I would talk to your mentors about how to do this, but I can kind of throw out a couple of thoughts that that come to mind right away. So one thing you can do is make sure that your aims focus on um, achievable goals that can be accomplished within the 5-year period. So even if you're accruing in the first 3 years, could you be collecting data while you're accruing? And will there be enough to accomplish your aims during the 5-year period? Even if the aims, you can make your third aim exploratory, which is a way of saying it's hypothesis generating. An exploratory aim doesn't have to result in a finished product that would be published. It could be something that is dipping your toe in the water of something for a future R01. So you could consider structuring your R01 so that the first two aims are achievable within the 5-year period. And then the third aim is exploratory and hypothesis generating. The other thing you can do is write in the future directions section that at the end of the project period, you plan on applying for additional funding, like a follow-up R01, to continue to build on the information from this clinical trial. So you could say we're going to using the same data, we plan to apply for follow-up funding to look at X, Y, and Z. But you have to have something that's achievable within the 5-year period. You can't simply say, oh, well, we accrued during the 5-year period and we haven't had time to accomplish any, to complete any aims. So we're just going to push this off into, another R01. You can't do that. You have to have something that's achievable within that time period, but you could have an exploratory aim at the end. The other thing you can do at the end of the 5-year period, if you just need time and not money, is to go into a no-cost extension, if it's a matter of doing that. But it sounds like what you need is more money at the end of that time. So that's what I would suggest, is make sure that your first two aims are something a little more conservative and doable within that 5-year period. Make your third aim exploratory, call it an exploratory aim, and that would be hypothesis generating. And then explaining your future direction section of the research strategy of the approach that you plan to apply for additional funding at the end of the time period to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and spell out what that is. So hopefully that gives you some options to work with there. But I would definitely talk about how to structure this with a mentor, more a mentor than a program officer for the obvious reasons. Okay, so let me know if that answered the question, or if there's more that you, if there's more information that I need to address there. Another question: I've emailed a program officer who seemed to align with my research more than any other POs from the Institute. I have not heard back after sending a brief email with my specific aims. Should I consider a different institute or simply try another PO, even though their portfolio may not match my research? So you've tried this person once. That's not, like I know that I have a section in, I think it's in chapter 1 of Master the R series that talks about like if you have trouble getting a hold of a PI, a PO, a program officer at NIH, try these different things, consider a different program officer, consider a different institute, consider this, that, and the other thing. Trying once is not doing your due diligence. I mean, like try like half a dozen times before consider any of those things. It is August, so it's hard to get people right now. And you never know what's going on in the world of anybody. Basically, you never know what's going on with anybody. They may have COVID. They may have, a sick kid. They may, be dealing with some family emergency. They, like you don't know. So keep trying. And I would email the person back, just forward the email so that they can see when the original email was sent and the aims will be attached to that. And just say, just circling back, I wanted to, if you were on vacation, I wanted to make sure that this was at the top of your inbox. And if you still don't get an answer, try again and put in the subject line, time sensitive question, colon, or just leave it at that, time sensitive question for October 5th deadline or whatever, just so they know it's a question for an upcoming deadline. But I would try like half a dozen times before you consider, moving on to a different program officer in the same institute, or, like keep at it. If it were me, I mean, it's early August. If you're targeting an October 5th deadline, I'd probably try once or twice a week through the next couple of weeks. And if you don't get an answer as you're nearing late August, then maybe start thinking about reaching out to a different program officer in the same institute and say, like, I emailed this person like 5 times and haven't heard back. And, I really need to get this question answered. So that's my take on it. It's funny because I've gotten this question a couple of times recently. And I think I need to add something to that course that really explains what the operational definition is of doing your due diligence, because, emailing once is not doing your due diligence, especially in the summer, because people are away. So, all right. So, feel free to keep typing questions in there, and I will turn my attention to two questions that were, one was from an anonymous survey and one was emailed to me. Oh, actually by I think the same person who just asked that question. So this person emailed saying, regarding ESI status, skipping a resubmission cycle and submitting the A1. My ESI status runs out in September. I submitted an R01 in February 2024, which was scored but not funded. Comments lead me to think I should restructure some aims and show more preliminary data, which leads me to think I should skip the November resubmission date and resubmit in March 2025. Given that I originally submitted the A0 with ESI status, will my ESI status be maintained through to the A1 resubmission if I skip a cycle? So just to restate this, the person submitted their A0 as an ESI in February 2024. They want to resubmit that, and in the interim, their ESI status has run out. And they're asking, hey, if I sit out the November cycle and resubmit in March 2025, am I still under the wire of getting the ESI funding advantage on that resubmission? And the answer is yes. Typically, and always double check that with the program officer, but typically the rule is that if you submit an A0 with ESI status and then your ESI status expires and you resubmit the A1 within 13 months of the A0, the A1 will also receive the ESI funding advantage. That's typically the rule. So for this particular person, the answer to that is yes, it should be fine, but always double check that with your program officer. Okay. Okay, this is a long one. This is an R21 question. Somebody just typed this in. Here's the background. I got reviews back for an R21 resubmission, which would fund one grad student for 2 years, where I got a worse score than the first round, despite the reviewers saying that I responded to the critiques of the first version. That happens a lot. And it could be for a variety of reasons, just so you know, like you may have gotten different reviewers that time around. You may have been scored against a much more competitive cohort because applications are ranked against the cohort in that study section. but that's not at all uncommon. Um, the summary of the discussion suggested that the panel was fundamentally split on strengths, weaknesses, and their weighting, and what was, quote, required for the scope of an R21. This is to a modeling study section, and the reviewer statement suggests that there is a fundamental philosophical disagreement about what a quantitative model should be. My approach doesn't fit one set of opinions, despite my citing lots of similar and motivating examples from the literature. My question is, when there is a big split in a study section, what it's related to panel member philosophical commitments that are not necessarily specific to my grant, e.g., scope of an R21, what quantitative modeling is, what are some strategies that I can take to the um, bridge the split or to reduce the influence of the detractors on the panel vote. I'll note that the experiments I proposed are tight and interrelated and would definitely fill up a grad student's time for 2 years. So there isn't space for additional stuff and isn't really anything I can jettison without weakening the whole. So my first thought is, did you speak to the program officer and were they in the room when this happened? Because they may be a great source of information about how you could think about potentially restructuring the way you've written this to deal with this philosophical split, because um, it may be a crapshoot. It may just be the luck of the draw and who you got. But it sounds to me, and I don't think you gave the score, it sounds to me like this was discussed. It doesn't sound like it was triaged. It sounds like there was not just a split among reviewers, but a split in the room. And split among reviewers on a triaged application is actually less worrisome to me because that's just the luck of the draw and which 2 or 3 reviewers you got on that R21. Let me see if they answered the question. 37 first time, 23rd percentile, 28 second time, 28. So it was discussed both times. So it sounds like it was a split in the room, not just among the assigned reviewers. And that's more troublesome because then even if you get different assigned reviewers, you may still have this issue. So one question I have for you is there another study section you can consider? I mean, that might be one way of dealing with it. But the other thing I would do is see if the program officer was in the room for either of these to see if they can help you strategize around how to deal with this issue, because this is a really, really tough issue. There's like a philosophical divide in a study section. And the other thing you can do is reach out to the SRO and say, like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, do you have any advice about like how I can manage this? But I think the PO may be a better bet in terms of getting some guidance about how to deal with this and see if there's another study section. Remember that if there's another study section, and I don't know how you picked this study section and how attached to this study section you are, if you feel like it is the one and only study section that could possibly work. But remember that you can choose a different study section. And even if let me see if the person responded. I thought you weren't supposed to contact the SRO. I did talk to the PO and it was marginally helpful. This study section is definitely the right one. Okay, so the SRO, you can you can talk to the SRO about an upcoming application. You can't really talk to them about a past application. That's not kosher. But the whole point of this is how to move forward from here. So I'm sorry to hear that the PO was only marginally helpful and that this is definitely the right study section. Um, then if this is definitely the study section you have to go to, then you have to figure out a way to restructure the application so that it is palatable to people on this study section. And I'm not a subject matter expert, so I have no clue how to do that. So I think I would go to a mentor about this and talk to them about it because this is a really sticky problem. And I'm not quite sure how one would fix that. So see if you can have a conversation with a mentor or department chair about this, and particularly if it's somebody in your field, and see if they've dealt with this issue at the study section and how they've addressed it. And that was actually, so this philosophical divide came up on the resubmission. So Yeah, so you can't even address it in an introduction because if you were to resubmit, it would be an A0. So it's not like you could address the philosophical divide in the introduction. Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's a really hard question. So yeah, I would talk to more senior people in your field who might have had this a similar problem or dealt with a similar problem at this study section and see what they recommend. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that. Um, okay, let's see. Did I do all of these? Yes. Okay, so I have another. We have a few more minutes left. I do have another question. Where was it? This came in as an anonymous survey question. Um, After the boot camp. So let me just reduce that window so that I can read this for you guys. Okay, so this person said, I would like to see a real grant proposal template walkthrough to become more familiar with it. This was somebody responding to boot camp. I still don't understand if the application involves filling out forms online or making a Word template to fill out the required chapters. So we actually wrote a response to this. And we have one more question after that. We wrote a response to this that I think we're going to use in a newsletter because it honestly, it never occurred to me that somebody would have that question because I just always kind of assume that all of you are working with a pre-award support office and they're helping to walk you through those steps. But I think many of you aren't. And so what I will say about filling out forms, I can't, it doesn't make sense for me to do a form walkthrough because the way people do this is going to vary depending on a lot of things. So it's going to vary depending on your mechanism. So, like a K applicant is going to have different things than an R applicant. It's going to vary depending on the structure of your project. So, you're going to have to fill out different forms depending on whether it's like you have a subsite, for example. And it's also going to vary depending on whether or not your organization has purchased software that acts as an interface between your organization and grants.gov. So all of these are forms that need to be filled out and eventually uploaded to grants.gov. But how your university goes about doing that will vary. So and I had one of my team members was talking about the various types of programs that people have, but I'll spare you that because we're a little short on time and there's one more question. But basically, it wouldn't make any sense for me to do a forms walkthrough because the forms are going to vary tremendously depending on your specific set of circumstances, and how those forms are filled out is going to vary depending on how your university does it. So for some pre-award support offices, the applicant just sends them their Word documents and they do a systems check, they PDF it, and they upload everything for you and fill out all the forms. For some people, you're the one who's doing it. For some universities, they subscribe to a software program that acts as an interface between you and grants.gov to help you collect the myriad documents that are part of the application package and upload them. And that interface is going to look very different than somebody who doesn't use that interface or somebody who has hired a different software program for that. So it wouldn't make sense for me to do that kind of walkthrough. So what I would say is that this is all going to eventually be collated and uploaded to grants.gov in various ways. Some things are drop down menus, some things you type in a short answer, some things you upload a document, typically a PDF. And this is something that I would speak with your pre-award support office about so that they can help you understand what process is used in your organization. Okay, and I think we have time for one more. And we have one more question that was typed in. Um, I submitted an R01 and it was not discussed twice. I met with the PO for advice and he said, do you have something else that you can work on? What is your advice? Should I submit it as a different type of R grant or should I just drop the idea altogether? So, ouch. So, I haven't read the summary statements, but I guess the more general question is, if something has been triaged twice, what do I do with the idea? Is it time to abandon it or not? And the answer, as with everything, is it depends. So I think that there are a lot of things to think about, and I don't know which organization you're at, but the vast majority of people on this call will have access to my master resubmissions course, and that helps walk you through the decision-making process for all of this. You may be going to the wrong study section, so it may be an issue of that. Um, I think it's important to read the two sets of summary statements and really be honest with yourself about what the reviewers are telling you. So I can tell you that sometimes I read today, I read two sets of these this morning of summary statements where both of them were triaged. But the reviewers were pretty encouraging. They liked the fundamental premise. There were some key things they wanted changed, like, aim two is too descriptive. We think you should do this instead of that. They talk about different types of techniques, use this kind of cell instead of that kind of cell, use this kind of analysis instead of that kind. Very prescriptive, but overall encouraging about the person's productivity and the significance and impact of the project, and they seem enthusiastic and interested. If the reviews are brief and damning, so long and prescriptive is usually better than brief and damning. And by brief and damning, I mean they don't give you any advice. They just say, we disagree with the hypothesis. We think the significance and innovation are low. We don't understand what, like things that are just kind of like brief and like, we just out of the gate don't get why you're doing this. If that's the kind of summary statements you're getting, it's probably time to abandon the project, but I would, or at least abandon it for an R01 application. You could still, once you've written the R01, if it's not getting funded, you could repackage it and submit it elsewhere. You could go to take a name out, go to a private foundation, you could submit to a different federal agency. You could submit internally, you could, do a lot of different things with it. But I would take a long, hard look at those summary statements and maybe share them with a mentor and sit down with your mentor and see what their opinion is of it, and see what they think, and decide if it's time to move on to something else. So that's my answer. Long, honest look at the summary statements. Brief and damning, bad. Long and prescriptive in terms of the changes they want to see better. And think about repackaging it. Even if you don't pursue the R01, you've already collected the data and you've, written the application. Maybe just pull an aim or two out and send it to a private foundation. Like, what have you got to lose? It's already written. So anyway, that's my advice there. And I would consider watching that master resubmissions course because it really goes into a lot of detail around the decision-making process about whether or not to resubmit. Okay, and I think that was everything. And it's 3:30. Okay, that wasn't so bad considering that I had no material for you guys today. So thank you for coming. Thank you for asking your questions. I really appreciate it. Considering that my guest was unable to attend at the last minute, you guys really rock. I appreciate that. And I will see you in 2 weeks for, let's see, what is the topic in 2 weeks? I am presenting on where and how to write up preliminary data in an NIH R series application. Also, if there are topics that people want to see me present on or have a guest on, always feel free to send it to me at meg@bouviergrant.com. And in particular, as I gear up to have this person come on to speak about AI in grant writing and potentially to develop a short course around it, specific topics within that you would like us to cover. So meg@bouviergrant.com. So thank you guys so much. Good luck with your grant writing and have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.